Good morning. My name is Stanley Boykin. I work at Washington Children's Hospital, the Computational Health Informatics Program. And what I'm going to take a few minutes to describe to you today is an implementation that we performed for generating patient-reported outcomes. It's called MySkills. Hopefully you guys are not acronymed out already, but this is my obligatory slide on the Skills Network. Basically, it's an open source clinical research data repository that has 13 participating sites, and it utilizes i2b2 and Shrine in order to provide researchers at one institution a wider population from which to do queries, or to do studies, I should say. And so, this is the skills life cycle. Basically, it looks familiar to probably a lot of people's life cycles when they do research. You generate a hypothesis, you do some preliminary work to determine if it's feasible, you contact your subjects, and you do the research, and you do the studies, and then you report back on it. The part that I am going to focus on is what we have termed the MySkills portion of this cycle, which deals with interacting with patients. So where skills deals with the whole life cycle, MySkills is dealing with interacting with researchers and patients in a way that casts as wide a net as possible in order to actually get outcomes reported into the system. Whenever you do any type of survey, any type of research, the obstacle is the participation, patient participation. And so the goal of MySkills and the goal of doing this multimodal, providing a multimodal method of engaging with patients is to cast as wide a net as possible. There are some people that, my parents, for example, they don't really care about the internet. They kind of vaguely know what it is, but they don't have email addresses. You can't email it. But they will talk to you. My mother will talk to you all day on the phone. Myself, I hate talking on the phone, but I will answer your email. And so what we tried to do and what we attempted to do is to provide these multiple ways of contacting and interacting with patients so that they can give us, they'd be eager enough to provide outcomes and report back to i2b2. So this slide basically just shows the main components of the system. The three components in the gray bar all reside on the same application container. The contact information mapper, that basically just tags the input that is received from i2b2. I'll get to that in a minute, with a unique system ID that can then be disseminated through the MySkills system. Survey manager registers REDCap projects and studies with the system, and it manages the submission receiving process. So once an outcome or a patient report is received either through REDCap directly or through the IVR system, which I'll talk about later, the survey manager manages that interaction and pushes it along the pipeline. i2b2 loader is exactly what it says. It takes the triaged outcomes from the survey manager. It maps the REDCap questions to the i2b2 ontology. It marries the questions with the codes, and it actually pushes it into i2b2. And then the lonely cloud on the bottom is the cloud IVR service. That is, it actually exists on a hosted service, interactive voice response service on the internet. It's basically voice XML and CCXML that allows you to do voice interactive surveys. So we wrote software that manages the voice-enabled surveys between REDCap and the patient. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the first step in the MySkills process is actually enrolling patients in studies. It's probably very familiar with everybody. This is the result of a Shrine query, network-wide query that a researcher will do. They'll work in collaboration with the local site i2b2 admins in order to do a feasibility study, determine if there are patients that are eligible to participate in a particular study. Once they identify that that is indeed the case, they will use the demographics tool that was mentioned earlier to generate a patient data set that has contact information in it. So email address, phone numbers, things of that nature. Once that's done, we use the contact information mapping tool to generate an ID and put it into a spreadsheet, which is a CSV, basically a glorified CSV file that is then ingestible by REDCap. So there's a lot of screenshots here. I was too chicken to do the demo live. So this is the REDCap registration step where the spreadsheet is ingested. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. And you have now a patient population that has been imported into REDCap, and you're actually ready to engage with them. So this is the survey ontology mapping step. It's a somewhat intimidating diagram. It just basically is a glorified way of saying that you take a data dictionary, a REDCap data dictionary of a MySkills survey, you convert it into a spreadsheet, you convert that into an ODM file, which is basically a clinical data interchange format. And then you use some ontology curation platform to translate that into concept codes and ontology. That was, I think, some of these guys are doing that as well. And then once you have that, you have the, the picture on the right that shows your survey in your i2b2 query list. So there are three main ways that to date that MySkills interacts with researchers and patients. One modality is displayed here, which is basically a staff-assisted survey where a researcher will use REDCap to identify the patient that they're going to interact with. Then they'll find their contact information there. They'll make a phone call to that person. Hopefully they reach them. Hopefully they've consented, and we'll walk them through the survey. And this was, again, to accommodate for people that don't necessarily want to talk to a computer, talk to a machine. First thing a lot of people do when they hear an automated service, they hang up. And so we built in this modality so that a person would be able to, or a researcher would be able to walk through a survey with a patient and then fill in the information on site and submit it to the system. That's the easiest, simplest way, or the simplest mode in the system. This next mode is a web-enabled survey, traditional REDCap, I believe, where the patient is, again, in the REDCap system, and the researcher makes sure that they have their email addresses for everybody, and they use the system to either do automated emailing or manual emailing of the people that they want to reach for a web survey. And so this just shows the survey participant list, very small list for demo purposes. Once they do that, then the actual surveys get emailed to the patient, and they fill it out just like you would a normal REDCap web survey. They submit it, and then it goes through the pipeline. So we'll talk about the pipeline next, or after this. Third interaction is kind of the trickiest and probably the coolest from my standpoint. It's enabling the voice interactivity of the system to engage with the patient. And so what we did, and this is a piloted system, we haven't actually deployed this for real yet, but what we did is we created a way for REDCap to be that gateway of interaction between the researcher and the patient. And so we would have a form in REDCap that would have, instead of survey questions, it would have contact information that has been ingested by the system. So the contact information that was gathered from the i2b2 output is placed here, and In addition to the subject information, you have the coordinator or the staff's phone information in here as well, so that the interactivity will be two-way. So what happens is a researcher will fill out this information and start a live session with the system. Once it's submitted just like you would submit any other REDCap form, that actually activates the cloud IVR application that we have and initiates the phone call. The conference is going to happen between the researcher, the system, and the patient. And that's what this slide shows. So you have a cloud system. The cloud system receives the data from a submission from the REDCap form. It basically just has a session ID in it. Since the cloud service is on the internet, we don't push everything out there. We just push this randomized ID. The cloud system then checks this, does a poll to get all the other relevant information that it needs, which is basically the researcher phone number, the researcher information, which is basically PIN, and the patient phone number. Once the cloud system will call the researcher at the number that she provides, ask them for that PIN. They enter it, hopefully it's right, and then they'll continue on to see it will then ask the researcher if the person they're about to call is a person you really want to call, and hopefully the researcher says yes, and then initiates that second leg of the call to the patient. Then what happens at that point is the calls are bridged. The researcher talks directly to the patient. Hi, this is so-and-so from this institution. You consented to do phone survey. Would you like to continue with this automated survey that I can press a button and you can start to interact with? Or if you're not comfortable with that, then just say so, and then we can do the live agent-assisted survey that I had mentioned a few slides earlier. So for the sake of my presentation, the patient says, yes, I would like to do the automated survey. And so the researcher presses a button, the system takes over. The researcher can stay on the line and monitor the session as it happens, so that if the patient has questions or anything like that, or if he's confused, the researcher can stop the survey, press a button, stop the survey, answer any questions that they have, and then continue on. And so the survey dictionary is then pulled by the cloud IVR system and is translated into a method that is voice enabled, or it basically does text-to-speech on the survey itself. Asks the patient responds, interacts with the system. Those answers are placed in a data module, or a data in data format, and is then, once the survey is done, the session is done, then it's submitted to the system. And that's what this slide shows. And what this is just a configuration of that survey submission. Some of you may be familiar with the data entry trigger in REDCap, obviously, and that's what we utilize. And the address is the endpoint to the survey manager that begins that ingestion pipeline back into i2b2. And so we'll use that information, and this is just a survey manager interface itself that does the registration of the REDCap project to MySkills, so that it knows where or what survey and what REDCap system the submissions are coming from. And also, there's information there on what forms, what are the actual forms you want to push downstream, and what forms you don't. So if there's any sensitive information on a form, you just the researcher will organize their data in such a way that all the stuff that wants to be recorded is on one form. Okay. This is a slide that usually I lose everybody with. This is the survey submission process. Basically, it's some integration pattern diagrams, but basically what this is showing you is, even though that it's complex, it looks more complex in its design, it's actually easier to implement, because all of these boxes are simple modules, simple input, simple output, and they communicate via message queues. So a response will come in, there'll be some initial triaging of the data, it gets pushed down the line, depending on what type of submission it is, whether if it's a web submission, or web survey submission, or an interactive survey submission, certain things may have to be done on the data. And then it gets pushed down, the mappings from the REDCap questions and the answers to the i2b2 concept codes happens in the box in the middle, and then it gets pushed into i2b2. That's basically what that slide is conveying in a nutshell. And then, hopefully everything goes smoothly, no problems, and as you can see, there's one patient that has submitted their results, and that's this bottom count here. And it just is demonstrating that the appropriate tables in i2b2 were populated, and the data is now in the system. And that is it in a nutshell. These are the people that are the main people that contributed. There was a lot of contributors, but most of them aren't here, so they won't be offended because they're not on the slide. But that's it. Thank you.